cities, we know more famous cities like Chandigarh, right up here, Gandhinagar, Bhubaneswar, but there's 65 of these. Now this idea does not stop only at the creation of new towns, but sort of travels. It also comes to places like Jaipur, which had a completely different planning tradition, which was backed by the king's authoritarian role. Nirankush Shasan tha. Before 1945, you could not do anything in the city if the king did not permit you, right? And from there, it's a major transition to a very different planning paradigm, and I'll talk more about it as we go forward. So it's a shift that happens both in British India and in erstwhile British India and princely India, where they unite the country using these similar ideas and uniform laws, where all country is one. So the book tracks this adoption of this planning approach in the first half. So people who read it, the first few chapters sort of track this, the discursive plans, the parameter plans, and formal plans. The first few chapters of the book, I just gave you a condensed overview version. I hope that would not prevent you from reading the more lucid and juicy details that are in the book. And then in the second half, I sort of move to the implementation of this approach at the city of Jaipur. That's the second half of the book. Key findings. I do not want to spend much time, as I said. I will talk about two key findings of the book that are at the heart of some of the stuff that we experience. First, professionals and decision makers incrementally internalize the adopted planning approach. So the idea that we should master plan the cities and they should have self-contained planned neighborhood, we internalized it to the extent that they are not perceived as foreign. If you tell somebody that this idea is from the US, they look at you as scam. They say, really? So that's one side of the story. The second side of the story is that Americans stopped making master plans much early on. The city where I live and work, Chicago, the last comprehensive master plan they made was in 1966. They said master plans don't work. This is an idea we experimented with, no good. They threw out the master plans out the window. The city does not have a master plan. What they do have is incremental level plans. So sort of more focused on areas or neighborhoods. There's few bigger plans that sort of do at the regional level, things like transportation, job markets, but there's no master plan. Right? So the people who invented it, did it, but we internalized it. It's internal, right? I mean, it's if you tell somebody we don't need master plans or neighbor plans, they'll say, really? What do you think is going on here? So that's first. Now, and they are also, we think of these as inviolable. Since they are so true that you cannot violate them. If you violate them, the state sends in the police. So these images are from the Delhi ceiling drive in 2006, right? So they're not only foreign, they're domestic, but they are also inviolable. They are the truth written in stone. You cannot violate either the master plan or any state plan, right? They're backed by the police power of the state. The second key finding, so while the state thinks of this, other people have agency as well, and that's sort of the second part of the book. But other urban actors, neighborhood residents, neighborhood users, real estate developers, politicians, they made their own plan. They said it's good that state has a master plan, but we have an agency as well and will make our own plans. So the second part of the book talks about the kinds of plan users made, both contesting, challenging the state's master plans, and also enriching them. So, for example, one of the chapters in the book talks about urban poor. They built informal settlements concurrently with the development of planned neighborhoods. And this is a finding which is true for almost across India. This is a map of Jaipur city. जहाँ भी हमने planned development बनाया, उसके तुरंत पास में almost concurrently कच्ची बस्ती बननी शुरू हो गई. Almost concurrently, right? So the two are conjoined twins. We cannot think of them separately. You can say this is Jawaharnagar and this is Jawaharnagar Kachi Basti. No. If you look at the settlement level, they are one settlement. They have deep economic, social ties together and political ties because the same MLA who represents them and perhaps the same councillor, right? We like to think it's formal and informal. That's not really true. And this holds true for most Indian cities that the poor people made their own plans. They made their own plans. They did not require. Only once the settlement had formed to a certain level and developed, they put together resources, in this case, democratic empowerment, that the poor could vote, and ensured that those informal settlements, usually not removed and nowadays almost impossible to remove. So we have them as part of the city. You like them, you do not like them, whatever they want to do, they exist, and they represent the planning efforts of the poor. Similarly, neighborhood residents themselves, that they came from a much better economic strata and social strata than the poor. For example, they sponsored temples in parks and open spaces. Now these are sort of unauthorized and extra legal. In line with the secular policy of Nehruvian India, planning authorities and development authorities usually desisted from allotting land for religious purposes. But people sponsored. So this is a map based on a survey of Jawaharnagar that I did in 2007. Most parks and open spaces have temples. These are community-sponsored enterprises, so people have put together money. Someone has used his connections to get electric supply, water supply, telephone connection. These serve as community places. People show up for Garba, people do their Tiyeki Bathak, people do all sort of things. You can do a little marriage, engagement party, right? So this is not the old historic temple. This is a community center, but it's not a community center as the way planners envisioned them. These are more dynamic and lively, rich, drawing upon India's ancient traditions, but also sort of moving the way forward, that you can get an Ayurvedic medicine. You would not be surprised in a few years if they have a Pitanjali outlet in there. People also changed the residential only land use dramatically. This is an image of Jawaharnagar in 1970s. When I was doing my fieldwork, that's how this spot looked. The only thing that is constant is this electric pole. Everything else had changed completely, right? All these houses gone or reconstructed, land use, residential only land use changed. This is the Kachi Basti adjoining the Jawaharnagar Kachi Basti. That's how it looked in 1970s, and that's how it looks in 2009, right? With the increasing prosperity in the society, the houses are pakka, and it's the road divides it, right? The cities, remember, have long histories. They live for a very long time. Now, similarly, subdividers had their own plans. Jaipur city and many cities in Rajasthan never had encouraged private involvement in subdivision development. It was only the state, remember, who was going to develop new city extensions. Subdividers utilized legal loopholes. The rules for subdivision did not exist, and the lack of end-use supervision. Right? JDA has few policemen on deputation. It cannot control, right? You need a military state to conform everything in a city to a single plan. There was very little end-use supervision. They utilized these to develop unauthorized colonies. So something like, over years, that's where cooperative societies somewhere start, late 60s, early 70s, almost 50% of the city's housing stock is either in informal settlements or the settlements founded by the cooperative societies. Almost half, right? So half of the city we live in has sort of some sort of later regularized or authorized or processed through some legal framework, but 50% of it is planned by the people, the way they think. And this is not state sponsored. State regularizes it for various purposes, but it begins as people's plan. That's why these plans are important. We cannot ignore them. Now, what does it all mean for the people in this room? What does it mean? I gave a little talk. I hope people enjoyed it. But more important, what does it mean? I think it means three things. First, as we speak, the deteriorating quality of urban life, the air pollution in the city, the water pollution, the water depletion, the traffic, the transport, all of us face it, right, on a daily basis. And more than us, our children would face it. And think of your grandkids, right? The quality of urban life in urban India has gone down dramatically. And वो एक गाना है, अभी तो पार्टी शुरू हुई है, right? अभी तो पार्टी शुरू हुई है. Think, in next 20 years, when 55% of India becomes urbanized, that's where I think in our very senior years, some of us who are fortunate to live that longer would see.